I actually gave it some thought yesterday after I made my video. Oh, right. What am I going to have to do my low, I have my active comments first. Let's see. Well, my low was kind of how I sort of rambled on in yesterday's video of how, it's just so jarring and bizarre to get back to the norm. But I'll get to that in a second. My high, well, if nothing else, Rita's always does cheer me up. And of course, every time we go to Rita's, I'm just happy all the time. And my act of kindness was, I got to do some stuff for my grandma. So, all in all, I actually had a nice little heart-to-heart with my grandmother actually yesterday. So that was really, that's another high that I had. I actually had a nice little sort of heart-to-heart with my grandmother about some stuff. Nothing, well, technically, yeah, it is really, really personal, but, it's nothing you really need to be concerned with. So, with that said, good morning, happy Saturday, everyone. Right. So, yesterday I kind of may have come across as rather depressed just because of what I was saying a lot yesterday and how, this is the first weekend since before Memorial Day, that is, in which my family does not have Chico Lake as an option to do on the weekends. So, in that regard, I have every right to feel depressed a little bit. Because, I just got used to being able to enjoy going up there, and now I can't do it anymore. And I made it come across as like going back to normal, not going to Chico Lake is a bad thing. And in all honesty, it really isn't. I may have made it a little too dramatic, I guess. And that shouldn't work at all. These videos are meant for you to enjoy and be able to, have fun. And me saying that, it almost felt as if saying going back to normal is bad, and that's not even remotely true at all. So, I gave it some thought, and through that thought, I became inspired. Inspired to do a new segment for these videos. What is the segment, you might ask? Well, I mentioned how, obviously, before I graduated from college, the norm for this time of the year was simply going back to school. So, this will be a small sort of mini-series, if you will, in which I talk about all of the most memorable classes and teachers in said classes, without naming names, of course, that I have had at Horseheads and Trinity-Pawling. So, yes, I'm calling this segment Class in Session. So, I've had a lot of memorable classes at Horseheads and Trinity-Pawling. So, let's get to a group of classes out of the way, and I'll be talking about them from least memorable and to, most memorable. How's that? Because, I remember them all, and I remember them, doing the work in them, and they all encompass one particular subject, being math. But each class was different in its own way. And with that said, let's get to what is known as Math B. Now, I live in the state of New York. We have what are called Regents exams. And they are supposed to be like, the final is not the end-all, be-all, apparently. No, it's Regents exams. If you want to be able to, say you graduate high school with a Regents diploma, which, obviously, I have. Now, here's the thing. Before heading into Horseheads High School, I was actually really good at math. Really good. Surprisingly good, even. I almost got to be in, the advanced math class, but, I just barely couldn't cut it, which, is fine. I don't need to do some sort of advanced class to know that, I'm smart. But as soon as I got to Horseheads High School, man, it was a giant whiplash. It started with Math A, and I'll be talking about that in a few minutes. But Math B was the time I got to think, okay, this is math that I really can no longer do. It actually got to be so incredibly difficult for me. Because here's the thing. Math B is when you start doing like those graphs, the curve graphs and stuff like that. And, over the years, my dad would help me, with questions if I needed help. And of course, he helped me with this. And it got to the point where both of us were completely stumped at times. In fact, I had asked him, because here's the thing. Sometimes the math homework got to be so incredibly difficult, I'd be up till after midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning. That's how hard it was. It got to the point where I tell my father, listen, I know that as soon as I'm an adult and I'm in the working world, I'm going to be using math everywhere I go. I'll never argue with that. I'll never dispute that. But am I really going to be needing to use this when I'm an adult in the working world? And then he's like, no, you're not. The kind of math you're doing right here is for those who want to become engineers and stuff. And then I'm like, well, that's one profession I have no desire to be a part of. So that was something. Now the next class was pre-calculus, which is technically more difficult than functional analysis and trigonometry. I took a Trinity-Pawling, but I'll get to that class another day. Now, pre-calc is exactly what you would expect. It's pre-calculus. And, that was definitely more difficult than Math B. But the thing about that class that's the most memorable is the teacher. He was a really cool guy, really chill, kind of acted a little bit on the preppy side a little bit, but nothing that was annoying at all. Fun fact, at least when I was there, I actually had no idea. To be honest, I have no idea if any of these teachers I'm going to be talking about in this series are still there at Trinity-Pawling or Horseheads. So if nothing else, I get to share some memories here, so that's nice. And this particular teacher was one of 2 senior class supervisors. He was basically in charge of getting all the senior activities ready, the senior trip that we take to Washington, D.C., the seniors take to Washington, D.C., which I really should talk about that as a graded report. I really should do that at some point. I'll have to do that another time. Right. So, I remember my pre-calc teacher being really nice, really approachable. And pre-calc itself was hard, but I was able to get through it. Thank goodness we didn't have a final, and to be honest, I was already poised to graduate anyway, because I was a senior when I took pre-calc. So I was fine. So in junior year, I took Math B. Senior year, I took pre-calc. So if there's a Math B, there's got to be a Math A, right? There is. And I took it my freshman and sophomore year of high school. So you got the 2 classes for Math A. And it's kind of hard to talk about one section without immediately talking about the other. But the problem is I don't really know which one to talk about first. Because Math A for part 1 for Math A, part 1 for Math A was the first time I actually started struggling with math. I got to be so incredibly traumatized by it to the point where I'm on my way to a football game, because I was playing football at the time. I'm leaning toward the front, eyes closed, asleep kinda. And I'm just going over equations in my head. And it actually woke me up. I'm like, why am I doing math in my sleep? I was doing math in my sleep essentially. That's how like scared and traumatized I was of this class. And I remember at the time, I did not like this teacher. Because this teacher would just nickel and dime me on every single test that we took, every quiz and test that we took, and I hated it. Like there were like quizzes and exams where I should have gotten like low 90s to high 90s, and it got to the point where my average for the first time for math itself got down to like in the 70s. It was freaky for me. It horrified me. But, I got to know the teacher a little bit better. And there's actually something about this particular teacher I'll be getting into momentarily. But if nothing else, I can say for part 1 of Math A, it really helped prepare me for part 2. Because I got to part 2 of Math A and I was just zooming. In a way, by zooming, like everything was just like coming to me. Like I struggle a lot with part 1. Everything I struggled with and practiced and tried to make myself better, it ultimately prepared me for for part 2 of Math A. Fun fact about my teacher for part 2 of Math A is I actually ran into her once at Rita's of all places. This was around 2018, like March, April, kind of. So it was still on the cool side, but not obviously unbearably cold when Rita's would just have opened. And I recognized who she looked like, but, I couldn't just approach her and say, Miss, again, I'm not going to name names, but if you're watching, you know who you are. So I approached her, calmly, and I said, excuse me, miss, you look very familiar to me. You wouldn't happen to teach math over at the high school, would you? And she says, why, yes, I do. And then I said, Miss so-and-so? And she's like, I don't go by that anymore, but yes, that was. Oh, I'm like, I had you as a teacher. Yeah, so I got to explain that I had this particular, person as a teacher, and it was really nice. So, long story short, I don't know what her married name is. To be honest, it never occurred to me to ask whether or not she was single or married. Again, I didn't realize you're supposed to look at the left hand of a woman until I was a senior. And I may have accidentally made that mistake once, but that's neither here nor there. Right. I said there was something about one particular teacher, the one for part 1 of Math A, the one that at the time I couldn't stand her. There really is something I need to say about her. Not long after I had her as a teacher, she actually got married to another teacher who worked over at Horseheads High School. Yeah. And this particular teacher was not only a teacher, he was also like the head coach of like the local swim club or whatever. For when you grow up and want to go swimming in high school, compete in swimming in high school, that's what you do. And this guy was a very well-respected and well-loved member of the community, both among students, faculty, and the community at large, actually. I say was because he is sadly no longer with us. As after, I believe it was about 5 years, he had battled ALS. His name was Brendan McCarthy. There really isn't much else to explain. I mean, I never really had him as a coach, but so he wouldn't be eligible to be among the initials of coaches I write on my right arm for athletic events. But if I did, he obviously would probably be on there. Again, I didn't swim. And for that matter, I think he was more of a girls swim coach. And I'm obviously not a girl. I mean, I'd be able to prove it to you, but that would not be appropriate for young audiences. Anyway, my point is, Brendan McCarthy was a well-respected man. In fact, he actually started a movement in his final years. See, he knew he had ALS. And unfortunately, we still live in a day and age where there is no cure for it. And for all we know, there may never be one. But he looked at this situation and said, listen, I'm a lover. But for this, I'm also a fighter. So he started a movement known as Lover Fighter. So he actually left a legacy behind. A legacy in which every year there's a 5K for him, which helps, promote his story, his message, everything. It's actually very wonderful. I've actually ran the 5K before. Funny enough, I've ran it twice, and the first time here's the thing, 2015 was the first time they had it, and I had not done something called Taxylvania. I probably could have gone and won. But the 2 years I did do the Lover Fighter 5K were, I got third and I got fifth in those races. So, yeah. Although, to the guy who could potentially, who is a friend of mine who's probably watching this, needless to say, the guy who won would eventually run the Boston Marathon, so I ain't beating that. Part of me thinks maybe I should get back to running, I don't know. But anyway, yes. So that is my history of math at Horseheads. Math A, freshman, sophomore year I took Math A. Math B was taken junior year, pre-calc senior year. And, I hope it gave you guys some insight as to a certain set of classes I took, even though it all encompassed, one particular subject. Don't worry. Not every class will have that sort of format. I just wanted to group them all together because, half was, this really didn't have the greatest, I didn't have the greatest history with math at Horseheads, but the times it was special, it was really special. And, what the heck, why not? This video is dedicated to the McCarthy family because, again, I just talked about Brendan McCarthy, the lover fighter. So, yes, thank you, Brendan McCarthy, for the legacy you've left, the community at large, and to the McCarthy family. I hope you're all doing well. So, there's that. And I hope you have a wonderful Saturday. Yeah, it's funny. It's Saturday and I'm talking about school. I must be back at Trinity-Pawling again. Like, favorite, share, and subscribe button. Follow me on social media platforms, notifications on YouTube. I am very humbled to make this video for all of you guys to watch and enjoy today. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful Saturday. And remember, if you guys want to talk to the channel, it's going to be here to lend an ear. I'll see you back. Take care and make good choices. See ya.